Hello, and welcome to today's Info People webinar, Stretch Your Storytime, Supporting Early Learning with Yoga and Movement, presented by Katie Scherrer. Katie is the owner of Connected Communities and the founder of Stories, Songs, and Stretches, a program that trains participants to use yoga-inspired movement to support early learning. She's a registered yoga teacher who specializes in the instruction of yoga and mindfulness to children. She has published 2 books with the American Library Association. Her most recent title is Stories, Songs, and Stretches, Creating Playful Story Times with Yoga and Movement. I am now happy to turn the webinar over to Katie Scherrer.
Thank you so much. I am really excited to be here to talk with all of you about using yoga in your story time. So thank you for making the time to join me today. Let's go ahead and get into it. So this is a really big topic, and there's a lot that we could cover. I wrote a whole book on this that ALA published last year, and I do a 14-hour training and certification on this. So it's pretty safe to say that you're probably still going to have some questions at the end of our hour together. But here's what I hope that you do end the hour with. I hope that you end with so a solid understanding of why we might want to use yoga in the storytime setting, what it is that yoga has to offer that so naturally aligns with the early learning that we're already working to support in the storytime setting. So I hope you get a little bit of a sense of how to use yoga in a story time. And also you're going to have a chance to experience some yoga shapes in your own body. I've incorporated in some chair yoga that you can do right along with me. And then there'll be a couple of places where I'll kind of contrast how I would instruct to a group of kids as opposed to adults. So you can hear a little bit of that distinction. So let's go ahead and just wake up our spines a little bit with a nice stretch. So with all of these chair yoga poses that I'm going to be offering, just make sure that you are making good choices for your body. You know your body best. So anything that you want to modify or skip that doesn't seem like it would be great for you today, that's fine. Please feel free to do so. And if you'd like to join me in this stretch, what we'll do is we'll come forward on the chair a little bit so that your back can come off of the backrest. So we're not slouching down in the chair. We're sitting a little bit forward and our spine is nice and tall. And just settle in and feel your body breathing here. When your next inhale comes, stretch your arms up alongside your ears. Check in with your shoulders and make sure that they're relaxed and not hunched up by the ears. And then on your exhale, go ahead and bring the arms back down alongside the body. We'll do that again. So stretching the arms up on the inhale and bringing them back down alongside the body on your exhale. And on this inhale, we'll stretch the arms up again, and we're going to stay here. And if it feels okay for your neck, gently tilt your face up towards the sky. So maybe you're gazing up in between your hands now. And rather than thinking about bending backward, we're thinking about lifting the chest up towards the sky and feeling this nice, gentle spinal extension. So enjoy this feeling for a breath or two. And then when you're ready, bring your spine back to neutral and the arms back alongside the body. Now, a shape that is similar to this that's included in the Story, Songs, and Stretches book is standing pose. And if I were going to be using standing pose with a group of kiddos, it's going to sound kind of different. So it might sound more like this. All right, everybody, let's come together and make a mountain range. So everybody stand tall, take a look, make sure both of your feet are on the floor. And let's just notice what it feels like to stand here tall and strong like a mountain. Feel your body breathing. And when your body's ready to breathe in, we'll stretch our arms up alongside our ears and look in between our hands. Feel how your body has changed in this shape And then we'll bring our arms back down. And from there, we might go on into a story about going on a hike through the mountains and all of the different things that we see. So maybe we make a river shape, and maybe we make a boat shape, and maybe we make a tree shape as we go on our hike. So you can hear there that the way that we instruct to kids and the way we instruct to grown-ups are quite different, chiefly with the way that we instruct to kids really being very, very playful and a lot less focused on those alignment cues. So what is yoga anyway? I'd like to offer a pretty traditional definition of yoga, which is that yoga is the union of the body, heart, and mind. But I want to emphasize this second piece of it, which is that yoga is what we experience when these seemingly disparate parts of the self are brought together. So yes, yoga can be going to a yoga class in a studio, and maybe we're moving really fast, or maybe we're moving really slow, maybe we get really sweaty, whatever. But regardless of what the practice looks like, the intention with all of these styles of practicing yoga is the same. And that is that the practice allows us to connect with our whole self. So we're really bringing together body, heart, and mind, however it is that we're practicing yoga. Yoga is not a religion. Let's go ahead and dispel some myths here. It is a contemplative movement practice. So there are spiritual components to it that folks are welcome to explore if they're interested in them. But it can be absolutely secular. It can be done in conjunction with any religion or no religion. So it's not a religion in and of itself. It is a form of physical activity, but it's open to absolutely everybody. So you do not have to be flexible to practice yoga. Yoga is available, and there are different styles of the practice that are available to folks of all shapes, all sizes, all ages, all abilities. And yoga is not a passing trend or a fad that's going to burn out anytime soon. It's at least 2,000 years old, and that's a conservative estimate. It's probably closer to 5,000 years old, and it's managed to travel from India literally to every corner of the globe. You can find folks practicing yoga pretty much everywhere today. So I don't know if yoga for goats is going to stand the test of time and be around for hundreds more years, but I think it's pretty safe to say that yoga itself is going to be around for the long haul. Now, if we decide that we want to share some yoga shapes with kids, there are some things that we need to keep in mind about how we teach those shapes. And the big takeaway here is that it's all about play rather than perfection. So that's an important message to communicate to people who are potentially wanting to do this themselves, and also to parents at the beginning of a class or at the beginning of a story time, because sometimes folks will feel like they need to kind of micromanage or fix the shape of the kids so that they look correct. I've got my air quotes here, so they're doing it right. But there is no right. When we're exploring yoga with kids, it's really about curiosity and giving them a chance to see what their bodies can do, what it feels like, all of that. And so I always say at the start of my classes, if I offer down dog, which is the shape that you see on the screen here, and I look around the room and I see 10 different down dogs, that's great. As long as everyone is being safe, then it's totally fine to to let kids have the space to figure out what the shape is going to look like in their own bodies. Likewise, we want to let kids participate at their own comfort level. So some kiddos are going to want to jump right in, and other kiddos are going to want to hang back for a little bit and just kind of take things in. And that is totally, totally fine, just like it is with all of the other aspects of story time that we share. If we are going to be using yoga shapes with preschool age kids, there are a few things that we want to keep in mind about their bodies and make sure that we're choosing shapes that are good for them. So for example, preschool age kids do not have a lot of ability in terms of balance yet. So we want to give them opportunities to practice balance, but we don't want to offer up a shape that's so dramatic in its balancing effort that it's going to be overwhelming for them. And finally, when we share yoga with kids, we are using lots and lots of imagination, lots and lots of play. So the yoga is going to be packaged inside of all of these super fun things that we do with kids. So it'll be inside of a story or a song or a rhyme or a book or a game or whatever other thing that we might be using. So we're really encouraging play. All right, let's take an opportunity now to feel another shape. We'll move our spine in the opposite direction. So again, in your chair, just scoot forward a little bit so that your spine can be nice and tall. We're going to start coming into that same stretch we were in earlier where we have the arms up alongside the ear. So just sitting normally right now, spine nice and tall, shoulders relaxed. When your next inhale comes, stretch the arms up alongside the ears. And when you exhale, just tilt the hips forward. So check in with your spine here and see if you've rounded your spine. That's something that we often do in order to try to get a little more distance. We might want to try to increase our stretch by rounding down. But actually right now we want to keep the spine nice and long. So it's more important to have the spine long and come up a little bit than it is to reach down super far. You can keep your arms alongside your ears, or you can allow them to rest on your lap or the desk or wherever feels good to you. And we'll enjoy another breath here. And then return your spine to neutral and just notice what you feel. A shape that is similar to that shape that's included in the Story, Songs, and Stretches book is Seated Pose 2. And this will be the last one that I kind of give you this contrast of how I might instruct it to kids. But I might, when I'm sharing this pose, say something like, all right, everybody, let's go ahead and find our way to a seat, and we're going to stretch our legs out long in front of us. Let's check in with those legs and see if they want to wiggle a little bit. So if they do, just bounce them up and down, give them a wiggle, 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 wiggle. And then we're going to try to see if they can be still. Let's play a little bit with our feet by stretching our toes long in front of us and then reaching our toes up toward the sky. Stretching long in front, reaching up towards the sky. And now we're going to feel our body breathing, stretch our arms up alongside our ears and fold forward, kind of like we're folding into a sandwich shape. See what your spine is doing here. So just kind of notice your body, and let's all kind of explore a little bit of an opposite with our body. So let's let our spine curve into a rounded shape and then stretch into a nice straight shape. Curve into this round shape and then stretch long. So we're making this opposite movement with our spine. Let's see what are some other opposites that we can make with our bodies. And then that would be kind of the direction maybe that we would go in, and be to just play around with opposites for a little bit. So again, you can see it's, for example, with this particular shape with adult bodies, I really want to encourage the adults to keep their spine in a certain kind of alignment. But with kids, it's more important to give them the opportunity to sort of play and experiment So having the opportunity to get that sense of opposites and feel what it feels like in their body is more important than aligning the shape in some perfect way. So here we go. Let's talk about yoga and how it is this incredible tool for supporting early learning. I mentioned before, there are lots and lots of different styles of yoga, lots of different ways to practice. And no matter what practice it is that we're doing, it's all about bringing body, heart, and mind together. And I am offering up the same intention with how we use yoga in the Storytime setting. So we are I kind of wrap it up in this concept or this idea of embodied play. So we're being very intentional about what we're doing with the yoga in order to support young kids' development of physical literacy, early literacy, and social emotional skills. So here's a visual representation of that idea. Yoga, again, it's yoking together, uniting body, heart, and mind. And when we're working with preschool age kiddos, we can bring them together, body, heart, and mind, by supporting their development of physical literacy, social emotional learning, and early literacy skills. So let's start with body, physical literacy. Shape America is it's a national organization that sets national standards for physical education. And they have a lot of great resources, and versions of their standards then are, they'll show up. You'll see them in the standards for physical education and physical development at the state level too. And so they have outcomes also that you can view on the website for what types of things you should be able to see kids do at different ages. They define physical literacy as the ability to move with competence and confidence in a wide variety of physical activities in multiple environments that benefit the healthy development of the whole person. And I just want to share a little bit here from Get Your Community Moving, which is a new book from ALA written by Jen Carson. And she says, literacy is a whole person experience. It involves facial expressions, body gestures, intonation, touch, and feelings. And I find it just so exciting that libraries are becoming curious about this relationship between physical literacy and other kinds of learning, and starting to embrace the ways that the space that we have and the relationships that we have in our communities and the skills that we have within our staff can all be embraced and brought together to provide ways for our communities to become more physically literate. I think it's a really, really exciting thing that is newly happening in our profession. I can't wait to see where we're at 10 years from now, just with the way that people are starting to embrace this. So in terms of standards, so the Shape America, they have all these different standards of physical literacy skills, and we're just going to take a peek at one of them. This is locomotor and stability skills. And here on the slide, I have listed several outcomes that we should expect to be able to see from physically literate kids at the kindergarten level, all right? So at the kindergarten level, a physically literate child is going to be able to hop and gallop and run and keep their balance while they do those things. They're going to be able to jump and land. They're going to be able to balance or maintain momentary stillness on different bases of support. And they're going to know how to form their body into different kinds of shapes. So wide, narrow, curled, twisted, these different kinds of shapes. So these are all things that we want to help encourage kiddos to be able to do around that kindergarten age. Now, knowing that, it's pretty interesting then to go ahead and take a look at a book like Call Me Tree, Yamame Audible by Maya Cristina Gonzalez, which is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. So we open that book up, and then we see all of these different shapes happening in the pages of the book. We see a body folded into a curled shape, which is child's pose from yoga. We see a twisted shape taking place with this upper spinal twist here. And then we see all of these kiddos down here momentarily resting in stillness and balancing in these different versions of tree. So what's really fascinating and exciting about this is it shows how natural it is to pair physical literacy, pair movement with what we're already doing in Storytime. And when we start to look at kids' books through the lens of physical literacy and have an idea of what skills it is that kids need to be developing, we're going to see these kinds of opportunities all the time. Pretty cool. Let's feel a little bit more in our own bodies now. Go ahead and scoot forward on your chair again. Let that spine be nice and tall. When we take an inhale this time, we're going to allow our right arm to stay rested on top of our right leg, and we're going to stretch our left arm up alongside the left ear. So feel an exhale and then a full inhale here, spine is tall, and on the next exhale, we'll stretch our spine over to the right. So we're feeling a nice opening, a nice stretch along that left side body. Only go as far as feels good to you. There should be no sensations of pain. And when you're ready, we'll come back up to the middle. Let that left arm come down and rest the hand on top of the left leg, and maybe roll the shoulders back and down a couple times. And whatever we do with asymmetrical poses on one side, we repeat on the other. So this time on an inhale, we'll stretch that right arm up alongside the ear. And when our out breath comes, we'll bend over to the left. Now we're feeling that side stretch along the right side of the body. Feel the space between the ribs, gently opening. Enjoying a breath or two here in this lateral flexion. And then stretching back up to the middle. Social emotional learning. This is how we engage kids in heart. All right, this is that yoga connection of heart. So CASTLE is a very well-known, important organization that is working to improve social emotional learning for kids of all ages. And their website is a treasure trove of resources. Lots to explore there. Schools are really starting to get very serious about incorporating explicit social emotional learning instruction into a lot of different components of the curriculum. So CASTLE lays out these 5 competencies that you can see here on the screen, and I want to talk about one of them specifically in our limited time today, which is self-awareness. Because self-awareness really is the foundation of social emotional learning. This is the skill, this is the competency that comes first. So you can see the definition of self-awareness here on the screen, and it includes things like being able to identify your emotions, being able to recognize your strengths, having an accurate self-perception. And also, it includes self-confidence and self-efficacy, which I found really interesting when thinking back to that definition of physical literacy and its emphasis of competence and confidence. So there's a lot of alignment there between the two. So how do we help preschool age kids to develop their self-awareness? How is yoga a tool that can help us do that? yoga is an incredible tool that can help us do that because it is all about fostering this mind-body connection. It gives us opportunities to pause and notice what is right now. Now, just coming into a shape like that side bend that we just did together is not necessarily going to make someone suddenly become self-aware, right? It's not so much the shape as it is how we use it. And so in terms of wanting to bolster development of social emotional learning skills, it's a matter of the kind of language that we use and the invitations that we extend to notice what is happening. So the kinds of questions that we pose, it's really similar to what we have taught ourselves or what the profession has trained us really to do with early literacy, where we're very disciplined about the way that we speak about early literacy when we do story time, right? Because we know that we have an incredible opportunity there to be modeling for parents how to use early literacy practices. So we craft these parent messages and interject them very, very seamlessly and naturally into our story times. And it's the same kind of concept with how we can really intentionally support this social emotional learning for kids. So as we move through different shapes with the body, we can give kids opportunities to notice what they're feeling and where they're feeling it, what shapes feel good, what shapes they like, what shapes might feel good at different times. And then over time, we start to develop this understanding of the relationship between thoughts and physical sensations and feelings. And that is really powerful information because when we know, oh, I feel really tight in my stomach, that usually means that I'm scared. Maybe there's a choice that I can make right now that would get me out of this situation where I feel scared or whatever. That's where the self-regulation and the responsible decision-making can start to come in. But it's through having this self-awareness that includes the awareness of thoughts and physical sensations and feelings and how all of those things are related that all of that begins. And the sooner we can begin to develop that awareness and that vocabulary, the better. So how can we do that in story time? Well, we can do it, as I just mentioned, by using shapes and asking different kinds of questions and providing opportunities to pause and notice as we are in the shapes and moving through the shapes. But we can also do it with all of these other things that we already know how to do as librarians. So we can do it in the way that we choose and use books. And this one, if you haven't seen it yet, The Rabbit Listened, oh my goodness, incredible. This book is so great. So it really just does an awesome job at showing this child going through a variety of emotions, and people try, or other creatures try to help the kiddo feel better, feel better, feel better. And the rabbit comes along and the rabbit just listens. And that's what the kiddo needs to be able to process their feelings. So we can choose books that allow us to explore different emotional concepts. We can talk a lot about emotions and start to develop that vocabulary. And we can also employ dialogic reading. And it's worth noting that there is really interesting research out there that shows that using dialogic reading can help to develop empathy in kids as young as preschool. Okay, let's feel another shape. As with all the other shapes we've been exploring, come a little bit forward in your chair. Let our spine be tall, shoulders are relaxed. We'll keep our hips where they are, planted on the chair. Feet are on the floor, toes facing forward. And keeping the hips where they are will allow the spine to rotate around towards the right. To begin, your hands can just be rested in your lap. And if it feels good in your spine and you'd like to increase the sensation of this twist a bit, you can bring your left hand over to the outside of your right leg and reach your right arm back behind you. So resting gently on the seat of the chair or the back of the chair or the armrest, wherever is a good place for you to rest your hand, and that allows you to stay tall in the spine, shoulders relaxed. Enjoy a breath or two here. When you're ready, come back to center and just notice what you feel in your body. When the next exhale comes, we can rotate over to the left now. So beginning just by rotating the spine and then maybe deepening the twist by bringing the right arm over to the outside of the left leg, left hand back behind the body, on the back of the chair or the armrest or the seat. Spine tall, shoulders relaxed. And when you're ready, we'll come back to center and just notice any shifts that you feel in your body after that little bit of spinal rotation. We'll continue by talking about the mind piece of this, which is early literacy. So hopefully most folks who are in the group today have a pretty solid foundation in early literacy skill development and early literacy practices. And that really is thanks to Every Child Ready to Read. I am an Every Child Ready to Read super fan. I think it has been so powerful and so transformative for our profession because it's allowed so many folks to start to connect with research-based practices and feel excited about that and feel excited by the science rather than intimidated by it. It provides us with a different way to understand the value of what we do every day when we're interacting with kiddos. And it gives us this shared vocabulary too. So it doesn't matter at this point, Every Child Ready to Read and the amount of training that has gone into that, it doesn't really matter if you're in a giant library on the West Coast or a teeny tiny rural library in West Virginia or whatever. Pretty much anyone who works with kids knows Every Child Ready to Read and understands that to help kids build early literacy skills, we talk, sing, read, write, and play. Now, the degree to which we all have an understanding of, you know, all of the different ways that early literacy is developed and all of the different skills, that might vary a little bit, and that's fine. But we all know at this point, talk, sing, read, write, and play. And that's how we can build a reader. That's how we can talk to parents. That's how, you know, those are the things we're going to incorporate into our story times. So I want to share the most fascinating, exciting study that I came across when I was doing the research for the Story Songs and Stretches book. And that is this 2015 study out of Australia that was on what happened when early literacy instruction and movement were paired together with more than 400 preschool kids. And I was looking at this study today to just kind of look for, you know, a tidbit of what I wanted to share with you all. And really, I can't say it any better than what the authors themselves have already said in the abstract of this article. So it's very short. I'm just going to read it to you. So it says, while movement is critical to young children's development, there is an ongoing debate about the time devoted to teaching movement in early childhood classrooms. And I'll interject here and say I think that there's a little bit of that in libraries too. Nevertheless, research has established a link between specific precursor motor skills and early literacy development. This study investigated the synergistic effect of practicing specific movements through daily actions and songs alongside the explicit teaching of phonological awareness and phonics in 400 preschool children. Results indicate that students who received the combined intervention of explicit phonological awareness and movement were the only group to perform significantly better than the control group on measures of phonological awareness, invented spelling, and spelling. An interesting outcome was that the combined literacy and movement group, and not the movement only group, made significantly larger gains for the movement measure. These findings suggest that teaching pre-primary age children early literacy and movement in tandem is more beneficial than teaching either in isolation. Whoa. I think that is just so exciting, and it really makes the case for why movement belongs in the library setting, and yoga is such a naturally playful kind of movement that does all of these other things. So it's just really exciting to me what this presents in terms of opportunity for libraries, especially if we're working together with other folks who also are committed to kindergarten readiness and school prep, like early childhood educators and parks and rec people and whoever else is dedicated to that cause in our communities. Sidebar, I am working on developing a study to follow up this study. I really want to see if those results can be replicated. So if you are interested in that topic and have the skills and resources to help me bring that to life, shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to you. Okay. So how then do we bring movement into our use of early literacy practices in the Storytime setting? Well, one way is we can allow the shapes themselves to inspire a conversation. So in yoga, for example, a sun salutation is a very well-known series of movements in which one shape follows another shape in a specific sequence. Salutation, wow, that's a really interesting vocabulary word. Let's talk about the different ways that we greet people. Let's talk about how the words that we use to greet people when we see them, and the words that we use to say goodbye when we're leaving. Let's talk about how maybe we might use different words to greet a teacher than we would to greet our best friends, and brainstorm some of those. What about saying greetings and different kinds of salutations in languages other than English? So just this one series of shapes has inspired this whole language-rich conversation that we've been able to have. And now we go into the movement. And as we do the movement, maybe we sing along. Maybe we try out one of these different sun salutation songs, of which there are many, and use the words of the song to teach us what movements we do and what order we do them in, and to provide the music that we are moving along into. So now we're talking, we're singing, we're moving, and then maybe we finish that up by reading a book that talks about different kinds of greetings, like Say Hello by Rachel Isadora. So maybe if we need to take a rest after moving that much, we just listen to the story, or maybe we let all the different things that we see in the book inspire some other kinds of movement. So just looking at the picture here, I see a child, I see a dog, I see a bird, I see a street, I see a fire hydrant. Any of those objects could be the inspiration for a yoga shape that maybe we move through as we read the story. So just in that example, we have done so many different things. So in terms of supporting early literacy, we've been talking and singing and reading. In terms of supporting social emotional learning, we've been honoring and celebrating diverse ways that people might greet each other. And in terms of physical literacy, we've been moving our bodies through all these different kinds of shapes which helps us to build confidence and competence at being in our bodies and moving in different ways, which is also connected to that self-efficacy and self-confidence component of social emotional learning and self-awareness. So in that example, you can see that we have been very intentional about what it is that we're doing, but it feels seamless, right? It doesn't feel disjointed. It all just flows together. And that is exactly what I'm talking about when I use the term embodied play. That's what it's about. It's intentional, it's fun, it's seamless. So I think that this is a good place for a little bit of a pause. So wherever you are, however you are, sit comfortably and allow your spine to be nice and tall, but also relaxed. Shoulders relaxed, maybe roll them back and down a couple of times. Your hands can just gently rest in your lap or beside your body. If it feels good to you to close your eyes, you're welcome to do so. We won't be here for very long. You can always keep them open if you prefer. And let's just take a little break to breathe. Just connect with the physical sensations of your breath in your body, wherever you can feel it most clearly. You may have a lot of thoughts and ideas swirling around, and that's fine. That's what minds do, no problem. For right now, we're just going to gently redirect the attention back to the sensation of this breath in, this breath out. When you're ready, you can blink open the eyes. So knowing that the next section of this time together, which is the last section of our time together, will be on a little bit more of the practical things. So how do you actually design a yoga story time? What would that look like? That's where we are headed. So knowing that that is where we're going, I do want to allow the opportunity here to break for questions if there are any questions about what we've covered up to this point. We're going to go forward and talk about the how, but are there any questions to this point about the why? So I'm just going to go ahead and present, or I'm just going to go ahead and take a little scroll back here and see if anything that has come in is something that I want to address right now. So these are all really practical questions. We'll come to those all at the end. Okay, yeah, the practical stuff. Okay, we are definitely going to address everything that has come in. I will make sure of it. So let's just go ahead and keep on going for now. Okay, here we go. So program design. This is what I usually use as my program template. So my program is typically going to be 30 to 45 minutes long, and I'm targeting ages 3 to 6. So there are a myriad of kids yoga programs out there that you can explore. And if you're interested in learning how to teach or incorporate yoga to other ages, you can look around and find lots and lots of great resources for that. My area of expertise, what I am super passionate about and excited about and focused on, is this preschool age group, 3 to 6. So that's really what I'm going to stick with talking about today. My classes usually have an adult caregiver present, and we start with an opening song, some sort of warm-up movement. And I'll point out here, with kiddos, kiddos can pretty much jump out of bed and launch into a back bend. So when we're doing the warm-up movement, it's not so much to physically warm up the body as it is to just kind of get into the groove and start to get everybody together on the same page in terms of listening and moving and all of those kinds of things. Then I'm going to pick a book that has some sort of movement in it. Maybe it's a very explicitly yoga-esque book, like something like I Am Yoga by Susan Verde, or You Are a Lion by Tane Yu. Or maybe it's something where the movement isn't quite as explicit or isn't specific just to yoga. So a great movement book, classic, From Head to Toe, love it. That's a fun one. It's by Eric Carle. Fun one to use that has lots of movement, but it isn't necessarily specific yoga poses, although you can kind of blend the animal pose shapes in with the other movements that the animals are. Some movement into it. And then I'm going to start to this is kind of the peak, the energetic peak of the program. And from here, it's going to kind of start cooling down a little bit. So yoga incorporates movement and stillness, and they're both really important pieces. And we fold both of them into the story time setting. So maybe we're going to take a minute just to notice the breath. Then maybe we'll do another movement game or story or book. I'm really big proponent of mindfulness for kids too. So I usually work in some sort of an activity that is an explicit mindfulness activity, or what I call a mindful moment. And then for my programs, I always end with a listening story. So we're bringing that energy down now and more into this stillness. And so the last book that I read is always going to be something that I've selected specifically because it ties in some social emotional learning concepts. So it's Tough to Lose Your Balloon by Jarrett Kroshka is a book that I love, or Breathe by Scott Magoon. That's a great one. Waiting by Kevin Hankes. So I'll pull in a story where we're just listening, we're just cooling down, and it touches on one of those other social emotional learning concepts. And then we come down to a period of rest at the end of the program. So this is a picture. This image here is from ABCs of Yoga by Teresa Power. Just want to give credit for that. Rest is the most important pose, and it's important not to skip it. So this is where we're really allowing kids to have that opportunity to just be still, and just be quiet. It's really tough for kiddos to do this. So starting off small, about 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on how long they can go, is totally appropriate. And on some days, you're going to hear lots of different sounds. There's going to be fidgeting. There's going to be movement. No, you have to try to control that. Just hold the space for this rest to happen. And again, we don't need to micromanage kids' shapes. They don't need to be perfectly rested on their back. They can be in whatever shape is comfortable in their bodies. And we're going to include ourselves in this rest too. So even if you're using some sort of a support to help kids rest, like bubbles or some nature sounds or something like that, still make sure that you lie down and rest yourself, because if kids see you sitting up and kind of watching them, they're going to feel like they're missing out on something. So everybody is encouraged to take this opportunity to just decompress for a second and rest. And when you actually have a room full of 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds who are letting themselves experience this stillness, it's like you've created magic. It's so amazing. And you'll definitely feel it. I can't really tell you other than when it happens for you, you'll be pretty amazed. We do want to take into consideration, some things about our own themselves, it's a physical program. If you're going to be including yoga and movement into your story time, that is a physical program. So you want to be very, very mindful of your own body and your own limitations. And the best way to develop that understanding of your own body is to develop your own yoga practice. So I definitely encourage people to work with a local teacher and somebody who can help them cultivate their own practice and feel these different kinds of shapes in their own body. Make sure that whatever you are deciding to use in the program with kids is something that you have done before and that you feel comfortable doing and you know how to do safely in your body. And demonstrate all the shapes that you're doing in an age-appropriate manner. So again, we do want to know a little bit about what's going on physically with kids of this age, like that balance example. They don't have really well-defined core strength at this age, so that is going to inform how we modify some shapes that we share with kids. And then when you are, I really encourage folks, it's easy to get caught up in the bustle of the day. So, you may be having to go to the desk and rush and do this and rush and do that right before your program. But after you get everything set up and before you open the door and welcome families in, I encourage you to take just 60 seconds, more if you can, but just at least 60 seconds to sit quietly with your own intention. What is it that you hope families will experience in the program that you're about to offer them? And remember, it's not about you. It's not about you doing a great or cool yoga storytime program. It's about them. That's why we're here. So what is it that you're wanting them to connect with and them to experience through the program that you're offering? And then when you open the door and let the kiddos in, you got to roll with it. You got to go with the flow. So sometimes when we're inviting movement in, depending on what kind of energy is coming in with their kiddos and their parents that day, it can get a little chaotic. It can get a little hectic, but we just go with the flow and we respond to what is happening in the moment. And as long as everybody is staying safe, it's fine. Everything can be welcome in the room. So I'm going to go back through and look at these questions and respond to these questions now. And as I do that, I just want you to know that there are lots and lots of different ways to connect with me. If you want to learn more about using yoga with kids, as I mentioned before, there's lots of different ways to do that. I do offer training and certification, but you don't just have to do it with me. It depends on what you're interested in. So I'm really focused on preschool and early learning and how movement and early learning work together. That sounds cool to you. There's lots of different ways that you can train with me, and all of that is here on the slide. If you're looking for something more broad, maybe exploring another kind of kids yoga training will be something that you might want to do. If you're interested in staying in touch with the kinds of things that I'm doing, I do training in person and online all over the place pretty much all the time. The best way to stay up to date is to just subscribe to my newsletter, which you can get through my website. And if you're going to be at either ALA Annual or at the AUSK Institute, come see me and say hi. I'll be presenting on physical literacy stuff in libraries with Jen Carson at ALA Annual, and then I'll be presenting on Yoga Storytime with Noah Lenstra and Barbara Scott at the AUSK Institute. So those are just a few things about me. So question, what is the best way for me to learn yoga poses to use in my story time? Work with a teacher, and also I would say check out, you could buy, but you don't have to. You can even interlibrary loan, Story Songs and Stretches. That includes 13 basic yoga poses that anybody can use in a storytime setting. So that's a good place to begin. Do you use the same intro in your story time, telling the parents and kids to do what is best for their body? Is there anything else that you add? Yes, I guess. I mean, I don't really have like a script that I read every single time. The key things that I do is I make sure that parents know that they do not need to be fixing or correcting their kids' bodies. That whole thing that I said about if I look around the room and I see 13 different down dogs, that's great. No problem. You know, as long as everybody's staying safe, which typically means, you know, kids are keeping their hands and feet to themselves. And then I'll also let parents know, it may be, depending on how excited your kiddo is, that I might need a little bit of help from you to kind of help me rein them in a little bit. So in that case, I'm going to say specifically, Aaron's mom, can you give me a hand here with Aaron so that everybody can see the book that I'm reading, or something to that effect. But if you don't hear me make a specific suggestion like that, then you can feel comfortable knowing whatever is happening is totally fine. So something along those lines is usually what I'll say. I'm sure there's probably more, but those are the things that are coming top of mind. What yoga poses do you suggest starting with for story time if the librarian in question is new to yoga? I would say check out Story Songs and Stretches and play around with those 13 shapes that are offered in the book. And there are also variations and movement extensions and early learning tie-ins for all of those shapes. That'd be a really great place to start. Someone asked, which do you find easiest to plug into Storytime? I don't know what that means. So questioner, if you could make that question a little more specific and resend it, that'd be great. When and where are your trainings? I do trainings lots of different places all the time. So yoga studios will sometimes bring me in. Organizations will bring me in to do training for their staff. And I'm also launching an online version of this training in 2019 with Libraries Youth Academy. So you can keep an eye on all of that stuff on my website. Do you need to have release forms since there is a physical activity? This is a really interesting question. This, I think, is going to depend on what's going on with your library and what kind of insurance you already have. So, for example, I worked at a library that did a martial arts program, and they went to HR to find out, hey, do we need to have some sort of release, you know, and nobody really knew anything. So they didn't do anything. And then also that instructor who came in, he had his own liability insurance anyway. And if you're contracting with somebody who is a yoga teacher to do anything inside of the library with yoga, they absolutely should have their own liability insurance. So it really isn't something that I have seen be an issue in libraries, because typically library insurance policies are already set to cover this kind of stuff. And when you think about it, the movement that we're doing in a yoga story time is really not that much more dramatic than what we might already be doing if we're singing something like head, shoulders, knees, and toes anyway. So it's not something that I have seen be a big issue, but at yoga studios, yes, everybody will need to sign a release, but also those are businesses. Do the caregivers usually do the movements with you? Yes, I always encourage parents to participate at their own level, but I also remind parents that adult bodies are way different than kid bodies. And so a lot of the shapes, some of the shapes that we're exploring may not feel great for your body today. So in that case, please feel free to modify or skip anything that just doesn't feel like it's a good choice for you today. Because really in a yoga story time situation, I'm not teaching to adults, I'm teaching to kids. And so the adults need to know that they are the ones who need to be responsible for making good choices with their bodies. So I'm not going to be checking in with them. Do you always use yoga mats? I don't use yoga mats, actually. As long as I'm in a carpeted area, I don't even mess around with mats. Sometimes people will bring them, and that's fine. They can use them if they want to, but they're really not necessary. And if I'm doing something that's outside or that's in like a floor that's not carpeted or not very soft, then, you know, mats are fine, or maybe towels, you can do that. So, you know, whatever you can do to make it as inexpensive and accessible to people as possible is generally a good thing. Aha, I was wondering when this question would come up. Do we have to be certified to offer a yoga class for kids? All right, so here's how I feel about that. I believe that anyone who does story time with kids can learn how to incorporate yoga inspired movement in very intentional ways, like we've just been talking about. I do not believe that you need to be a yoga teacher to use yoga and movement in story time. Okay. You do need some training. You need to know some things, and you need to know what you're doing. And as I've said, there's lots of ways to get that. However, if you want to teach a yoga class, that is a different situation. So being a yoga instructor is a profession. It is a profession the same way that being a librarian is a profession. You have to go through certain training and you have to obtain certain certification, and there are reasons for that. It's really important to understand different things that are going on with different kinds of bodies. So if you are interested in offering yoga classes for kids or teens or adults or whoever, then yes, you need to go forward with getting a minimum of a 200-hour training, and then I would say even some additional training specific to the age group that you want to work with. So I feel very comfortable with folks who have familiarity with yoga, including yoga into their story time. And in fact, I think there's so much value to be had from that I want to actively encourage it, but not teaching a full-on yoga class, especially as you move up into older ages. So Mary, I know that we're at 4. Do you want me to keep going with some of these questions, or just kind of, yeah?
I think we have the questions pretty well answered. There's a couple of repeats asking about the yoga mats and the release forms. So I think you did a good job answering all the questions that have come in, Katie.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for listening. And if you have any questions, please reach out. I'd be more than happy to talk to you.